He was the British royal family's most savage member. Not only did he have zero filter, but he once told a female parliament staffer in a red dress, "I'd get arrested if I unzipped that dress." Yet, at the same time, he was the love of Queen Elizabeth II's life, the longest reigning monarch in history. From a controversial exiled prince to a royal consort, how exactly did he win the heart of Elizabeth II? And as if being the Queen's husband wasn't enough, rumors claim he was linked to at least 12 different women. That's right, today we're unpacking the life of the eccentric, alien-obsessed Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. June 10th, 1921. Our protagonist, little Philip, was born on the island of Corfu, Greece. But get this, he wasn't born in some fancy palace delivery room. He was born on a dining table. This chaotic debut was basically foreshadowed his destined, non-traditional royal life. Philip's father was Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark, and his mother, Prince Alice of Battenberg, was the great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Plus, his maternal grandfather was a German prince. Basically, Philip had the blood of half the royal families in Europe, the kind of noble lineage you usually only see in history books. But there was a catch. Greek politics at the time was messier than a reality show. The royal family and the government were beefing, and the monarchy was on the verge of collapse. So Philip's prince title was basically a limited time trial. Sure enough, just a year after he was born, life threw a major curveball. In 1922, after Greece got wrecked in the war with Turkey, his dad was blamed as a scapegoat and accused of treason. He was literally about to be executed. Luckily, his cousin, King George V of the UK, stepped in and sent a warship to save him. So, at just 18 months old, Philip was stuffed into an orange crate and whisked away on an exile adventure. They didn't go to London though. They moved to Paris. Why? Because Britain didn't want the drama of hosting the entire Greek royal family. It would have been a diplomatic nightmare. So they kept it low-key, moved in with the relatives in France, switching from royal to civilian mode. But those quiet days didn't last. The family fell apart. His dad left, his mom was institutionalized for mental health issues, and his sisters all married into German nobility. As the only boy, Philip was shipped off to a school in the UK and lost touch with everyone. How much did this affect him? In a later interview, when asked what language they spoke at home, he paused and asked, "What do you mean by at home?" That line hits hard. It perfectly captures the loneliness and the identity crisis of his childhood. Join us on Amazing Talker. It's our one-on-one tutoring platform. You can find a tutor to learn about English or history or any other subject. Our tutors are from all around the world and speak your native language. More than 1 million students have joined us already, making us one of the largest learning platforms online. So if you're interested in learning more, learning languages, or just something a little less scary, well, just click on the link below and register to get $10 off. Philip's childhood was a mess, but he didn't just quite quit. He used those years of exile as his hero origin story. After high school, he joined the Britannia Royal Naval College and graduated top of his class. This wasn't just for the degree. It was his way of building a new identity, from an exiled prince to a future naval officer. And that's exactly where he met the woman who changed everything. The future Queen of England, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary. In 1939, a 13-year-old Princess Elizabeth was visiting the college with her parents. Her host? Her 18-year-old distant cousin, Philip. Word is, Elizabeth was instantly smitten by this tall, blonde, six-pack abs hunk. She basically added him to her cart on the spot and told her dad he was the only man she could ever love. It wasn't an immediate happily ever after. World War II broke out, and Philip was sent to the front. They kept the flame alive through letters, ultimate long-distance relationship goal. Imagine Philip dodging shells while writing "Thinking of You" and Elizabeth's letters being his only comfort in the war. After the war, Philip returned from the Pacific and proposed at Balmoral Castle. He later said that surviving the war and falling in love made all the world's problems seem small and petty. But then came the hurdles. Philip had the title, but he was basically a broke prince with no kingdom. Plus, his sisters were married to Germans, which was a huge red flag in post-war Britain. King George VI was not a fan of the match, but Philip didn't back down. To marry Elizabeth, he gave up his Greek and Danish titles, converted religions, and became a British citizen. He even ditched his family's name for his mom's British name, Mountbatten. He literally rebooted his entire life just to be with her. If that's not what true love is, what is? Finally, in 1947, the king gave in. Philip even quit smoking for her on their wedding day. But the sacrifices didn't stop there. In 1952, Elizabeth became queen. Philip expected to share the glory, but he got hit with the surname drama. Prime Minister Churchill insisted the royal family stay Windsor, meaning Philip's name, Mountbatten, would be erased from the lineage. Philip was crushed. He famously complained, "I am the only man in the country not allowed to give his name to his own children. I am nothing but a bloody amoeba." It wasn't until 1960 that a compromise was reached with the Mountbatten Windsor name. Throughout their marriage, Philip was the one who kept the queen grounded and laughing. He was famous for his savage humor and for always telling her the truth. They used to write Lilibet letters to each other, with Philip calling her the only absolutely real thing in his world. In 2003, he even dressed up as a palace guard just to prank her during an inspection. That kind of playfulness is probably how they stayed together for 73 years. When people think of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, the phrase fairy tale couple usually comes to mind. Their 73-year marriage made them the ultimate blueprint for modern royal romance. But in reality, Philip's life was shadowed by a non-stop parade of rumors. It's said he was linked to at least 12 different women, while Buckingham Palace was always quick to shut them down, claiming, "There's nothing to see here." These stories became permanent fixtures in the royal gossip history. Today, we're counting down some of Prince Philip's most famous close confidants. In post-World War II London, everyone was ready to party. Young, handsome, and fit, Prince Philip was essentially walking pheromones at every event. He belonged to a group of male friends the media dubbed the Gossip Gang, and they were regulars at the city's nightclub. Philip's most notorious link during this time was nightclub star Pat Kirkwood. Reports say Philip once drove her to a club in his sports car where they danced cheek to cheek until dawn. While Kirkwood hated being labeled as Philip's mistress, her comments to reporters suggested their bond wasn't exactly simple. She once said, "I would have had a happier and easier life if Prince Philip, instead of coming uninvited into my dressing room, had gone home to his pregnant wife on the night in question." She also added, "I suspect he felt trapped and rarely got a chance to be himself. I think I got off on the right foot because I made him laugh." The gossip rags ate this up, interpreting it as Philip can only drop the royal consort mask and truly relax when he's with me. This scandal kicked off decades of rumored infidelity. The second lady on our list might actually shock you because she was practically family. That's right, we're talking about Susan Barantes, the mother of Sarah Ferguson, who was married to Philip's son, Prince Andrew. Yes, his own son's mother-in-law. This bombshell came from biographer Andrew Lowney, who shares a name with Philip's son, but he's the author, so don't get them mixed up. In his book, The Rise and Fall of the House of York, he revealed that Philip and Susan were secret lovers. Supposedly, the affair started because Susan's husband, Ronald, was cheating, which drove her closer to Philip. Many skeptics think this rumor is baseless, especially since Lowney's book dropped in 2025, long after both Philip and Susan had passed away and couldn't defend themselves. However, Lowney swears by his source, his wife, Angela, who grew up as a neighbor to Susan's husband's family and heard the story firsthand. Even wilder, Susan's cheating husband actually wrote in his 1994 memoir, The Galloping Major, I always suspected that Prince Philip had an eye for Susie. Certainly, they remain friends to this day. Talk about a plot twist! When the husband himself jumps into the gossip pool, it definitely adds a buff to the rumor's credibility. But if we're talking about the most sensational rumor of all, we have to mention Helen Cordet. This is the one where Philip was accused of having secret love children. Helen was a beautiful Greek cabaret singer and a nightlife companion of Philip's in their younger years. In the late 1950s, after separating from her husband, Helen had 2 children, but refused to name the father. Meanwhile, our dear Prince Philip just happened to be the godfather to both kids. Beyond that, it was leaked that Philip helped pay for their private schooling and even bought Helen a house in London. Naturally, the public went wild, speculating that Philip was the biological father. I mean, who else is that generous for no reason? Philip denied it, of course, but the image of the prince playing the royal consort by day and secret dad by night was enough to keep the tabs printing for years. The final woman we're discussing is often called the second most important woman in the Duke of Edinburgh's life and his keeper of secrets, Penny Knatchbull, who was 30 years his junior. Philip and Penny bonded over their shared love for carriage driving. They were frequently seen together at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, and Philip even gave her rides on his motorcycle. Isn't the backseat of a bike usually reserved for the girlfriend? When Philip retired to Sandringham House in 2017, Penny visited him privately and remained one of his closest companions in his final years. Even crazier, in 2019, after Philip got into a car accident, the Queen reportedly summoned Penny to convince him to give up his driver's license. And he actually listened. Wait, what's going on here? Did the Queen really think he'd listen to Penny more than her? It gets better. Because they were so inseparable, Penny earned the nickname and also. Why? Because whenever a guest list was being made for a royal event, private or public, and someone said, let's invite X and Y, Philip would inevitably insist, and also Penny. When Philip passed away, only 30 guests were invited to his funeral due to restrictions. Penny wasn't just one of those 30. She was the only non-royal in attendance. That tells you everything you need to know about her place in his heart. While most believe this was a soulmate level friendship rather than a physical affair, a close friendship lasting decades like that definitely makes you wonder. Did those stories ruin Philip's image for you? Well, hold on, because I've got more. If hellish gags could actually send you to hell, Philip would be on the 18th floor. Despite being the British prince consort, he had a notorious habit of saying the absolute wrong thing at formal events. For example, he once asked an Aboriginal Australian performer, "Do you still throw spears at each other?" This caused an immediate uproar. People saw it as incredibly racist because it reduced a rich culture to a savage stereotype. In reality, spears carry deep historical and ceremonial significance for the indigenous Australians, but Philip turned a cultural symbol into a punchline. Though, to be fair, one of the performers later tried to defend him, saying the media took the comment out of context. But these disaster-class gaffes were a regular occurrence for him. During a 1986 visit to China, he described Beijing as ghastly and told British students there, "If you stay here much longer, you'll all be slitty-eyed." Slitty-eyed is a derogatory trope historically used by Westerners to mock Asians, if you didn't know. It doesn't just make fun of physical features, it carries connotations of being shifty or untrustworthy. His comment only deepened those negative stereotypes. He didn't stop there. He also made a hellish joke about Cantonese eating habits. If it has 4 legs and is not a chair, has wings and is not an airplane, or swims and is not a submarine, the Cantonese will eat it. This played right into the Western stereotype that Chinese food culture is uncivilized and they eat anything that moves. In 1998, he asked a British trekker who had just returned from Papua New Guinea, "You managed to not get eaten then?" This was beyond the pale. While cannibalism existed in that region's distant history, it's long gone. Philip was essentially living in a different century. Beyond the racial jokes, his comments about women were also a no-go. He once said, "I don't think a prostitute is more moral than a wife, but they are doing the same thing." Excuse me, sir? What are we even saying? He not only compared wives to prostitutes in a sexual context, but implied there was no moral difference between the two. Where's the respect for the queen? In 1984, he asked a woman in Kenya, "You are a woman, aren't you?" In 1988, looking at the house plans for the Duke and Duchess of York, he remarked, "It looks like a tart's bedroom." Tart is British slang for a prostitute. I guess we can see what you're thinking about, because Philip sure had prostitutes on the brain a lot. But in 1992, he told a female parley employee in a red dress, "I would get arrested if I unzipped that dress." Listening to these politically incorrect comments makes you break into a sweat just hearing them. And Philip's sharp tongue didn't spare his own son, Charles. Perhaps because Philip survived a wandering, unstable childhood, he wanted Charles to be tough, no crying, no complaining. But Charles was a bit more sensitive. Philip constantly told him to man up, which planted the seeds for their strained relationship. How strict was Prince Philip as a father? Having never had a traditional father figure himself, he treated parenting like a prince-building laboratory. Since there was no manual, he tried every formula he could think of and ended up with sons who were nothing like what he imagined. His eldest, Charles, was his first lab rat. As mentioned, Philip wanted Charles to be manly because he saw him as timid and weak. As a naval officer, Philip believed strict discipline built character, so he took the sensitive, art-loving Charles and threw him into the Devil's Boot Camp, Gordonston School. Charles later described it as Colditz in kilts. Colditz was a famous Nazi prisoner of war camp. He felt like a prisoner forced to walk around in kilt uniforms under extreme control. Charles was miserable there, bullied and beaten to tears by his classmates. Even after graduating from the prisoner of war camp, Charles never became the alpha male Philip wanted. Philip's assessment of him remained brutal. He called him precious, extravagant, and lacking in dedication to make a good king. Ouch. Worst of all, Charles revealed in a biography that Philip used to humiliate him in public with mocking banter that brought him to tears, especially at social gatherings. To survive this toxic environment, Charles' strategy was to disengage. Journalist Graham Turner wrote that Charles was often absent from family affairs because his father simply wouldn't let him participate. Charles deals with it by disengaging. That is why he doesn't play a bigger role in family affairs. His father often doesn't let him get a good look in. These experiences created a Charles who was indecisive and prone to avoiding conflict, traits he later brought into his marriage with Princess Diana. When things got tough, he froze up, which eventually pushed the marriage toward its tragic end. While he was iron-fisted with his eldest, Philip was incredibly indulgent with his second son, Andrew. Andrew was a lot like him, confident, outgoing, and adventurous. He joined the Royal Navy and became a helicopter pilot. Maybe Philip saw his younger self in Andrew, or maybe Andrew just fit the tough guy mold Philip admired. Whatever the reason, they were very close, but that indulgence had a dark side. Andrew grew up wrong. In 2008, Andrew's financier friend, Jeffrey Epstein, was charged with child sex abuse and soliciting minors. In 2014, Virginia Giuffre publicly accused Epstein of selling her to Prince Andrew when she was just 17. She claimed she was forced to have sex with him and was too afraid to resist because of Epstein's threats. She noted the incidents happened in London, New York, and a private island. She even provided a 2001 photo as evidence showing Andrew with his arm around her alongside Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. The scandal dealt a massive blow to the royal family's reputation. To save the monarchy's image, Philip had to pull the plug. He personally advised the Queen to strip Andrew of all his royal titles. The unlimited favor mode was officially over. Finally, there's the youngest, Prince Edward. After the first two, Philip finally found a balance between extreme strictness and extreme indulgence. Though he was initially disappointed when Edward dropped out of military training, over time he saw that Edward stayed out of trouble, avoided scandals, and quietly did his royal duties. Philip eventually seemed to think, okay, you're a good kid, you pass. Strictly speaking, Edward is the only son who didn't turn out wrong in the end. April 9, 2021. The morning at Windsor Castle was incredibly quiet. After heart surgery and months in the hospital, Prince Philip chose to go home to spend his final moments with the Queen. He passed away peacefully, like finishing a 99-year mission and signing off in style. At noon, Buckingham Palace announced the news. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband. The whole country hit pause. Flags went to half-mast and the UK entered an 8-day mourning period. True to his character, Philip wanted a low-key funeral. No drama, no extravagance. Only 30 family members attended due to the pandemic. His coffin was carried on a custom green Land Rover he helped design himself. Total main character energy for his final exit. Looking back, whether he was a tough naval officer, a devoted royal consort, or the king of roasts, he lived every role to the fullest. His story isn't just royal history, it's a story about family, duty, and sacrifice. As the Queen said, he has been my strength and stay. His passing ended an era and a 73-year love story, but he definitely left his mark on the world. And that's a wrap for today. Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and smash that like button. Share this with your history-loving friends, and we'll see you in the next one.